Are we live yet? Oh, I'm getting the thumbs up from the green room, so that means we're live. I wish StreamYard would let me know when we're live, but hey, now I got one machine saying we're live. The other one's still waiting. So I'm going to go with the one that says we're live. Hi, I'm Brent Leary. It's a nice day here in Atlanta. It's a little after noon Eastern. It's going to be like mid 80s here in Atlanta. God, I gotta love that. And the humidity is not too bad yet. So I'm not gonna complain. I'm never gonna complain, especially when it's Friday afternoon and it's small biz breakdown time and I get a chance to speak to some good and smart people. You determine who I'm talking about. But anyway, all the way from Oregon, it is Leland from Oregon.
Hey, it's great to be here. It is beautiful over here. I got out and mowed the lawn yesterday.
Wow.
So it's spring has sprung and I'm here for it.
You know who else is here for it? All the way from lovely Medina. It is Madam Mic Drop herself, the do-it-yourself marketer extraordinaire. Even a tailor is here.
Hey, y'all. It is so good to see you. Thanks for having me back.
We always want you back.
Oh, yeah. Always.
Goes without saying. You know what else we like to have back? All the way from our nation's capital, where there's probably some stuff going on. It is Shashi from Washington, D.C. Hey, Shashi.
Hey, everyone. So glad to be here.
How's things in our nation's capital?
Rainy in the morning, sunny and bright in the evening, and I think the weather-wise, it's quite good.
All right.
At least the weather is treating us well.
That's right. Sunny and bright, huh? That makes a nice segue for our last and certainly least member of the crew. The cold one, the bold one. He is John Colder Ice Lawson.
Whatever.
What is that?
Whatever.
Is that your presidential wave or what was that? I didn't say which president.
But that's just my wave. It's my morning wave.
Oh, it's your morning. Well, it's afternoon here, so just saying.
Yeah, it's morning somewhere.
It's always morning in somewhere.
There you go.
There's a lot of mourning going on currently in the U.S., particularly over our 401ks in our investments right now. I ask this question pretty much every week, and especially when we get some new economic kind of data. And I always want to catch the pulse of the crew here. So, fresh off the news line here.
Yep.
We got some positive news. U.S. payrolls rose 228,000. I think it was expected to be in the 170,000 range or something like that. So that was a positive surprise to the upside. Although the unemployment rate did tick up a bit, it looks like 4.2%. Also, it looks like hourly wages went up a little bit, like a tick up, 0.3%, as expected. So that's some good, economic news. Now, let's move on because there's a lot of stuff going on here. This is a snapshot of the last 5 days of the stock market at Dow Jones. And as you can see, on this day, April 3rd, just like you hardly ever see those straight down kind of things. But that's what a straight down kind of things happens. I don't know. Does anybody know what happened on April 3rd? That might have caused this?
Liberation Day.
Liberation, or somebody said Liquidation Day. You take your pick. This is the Dow.
I'm liberated from all my money.
This is the same thing. This is the same thing, except this is the month view, which gives you an even more steep fall. Now, this is the worst performance of the S&P for any first 50 days, I think, of a presidential, 4 years. All right, so that's all being caused by this tariff thing. Take your pick. Now, this is some of the responses outside of the U.S., I guess that, or in some cases inside the U.S. The French president or premier, I guess he's the president. I don't know. He's starting to talk about retaliatory tariffs against services, not products being made, tech services, which is going to get a lot of people's attention if they actually go through that. China is retaliating with 34% tariffs on U.S. imports. Kind of steep. Nintendo is delaying, and this is for all you gamers out there. Nintendo is delaying the release of their next product because of tariff uncertainties. Gavin Newsom apparently is trying to get these countries that are getting tariffed to say, "Hey, look, it ain't California. Don't blame us. Don't tariff our products. We're with y'all." Apparently, so I got that going on. The Fed chair, what's his name, Jerome Powell, just got off. I guess they were doing a conference call, or he was doing a presentation. He says he sees higher prices and slower growth because of the tariff plan, but is maintaining a wait and see stance on making changes with the rates. J.P. Morgan raises global recession odds from 40% to 60%. That just happened. What was that day again? April 3rd. I think that was the 3rd. Let's see. Is there anything else going on here? Yeah, we'll stop there. So that's kind of the lay of the land when it comes to the current economic environment. Now, every week we get a chance to kind of go around and say, how are you feeling this week about things? And for the most part, everybody's kind of been sitting pat. Not a lot of change. I think Shaki said you're starting to feel a little bit different, but let's go to Eva, because we missed you last week. What is all this stuff? What does all this stuff mean to you? How are you feeling about all this stuff from a small business person perspective?
Well, I wasn't here last week to do mic drops, so I'm prepared for mic drops today. And I'm going to throw some woo-woo at you, which is my observation is that there is a story for every point of view. Okay, everyone's got a story about what this means. There are people who think that this is the best thing since sliced bread, and then there are people who think that the world is ending. And my message to small businesses is choose the story that you're going to tell yourself. I really want to say, don't get caught up in the overwhelm, the information / disinformation / whatever, because, like all things in numbers, there are people who think that this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, that we're going to see a big reset. I'm questioning. I always ask myself, when I don't understand what's happening, I got this from when I worked in private equity. When I don't know what's happening and the actions that people are taking are confusing to me, I ask myself, who benefits by the circumstances? So like if it's raining outside, farmers benefit because farms love rain, right? I might be sad because I was going to the beach and now I can't, but it's a good thing for people who grow things. So I ask myself, who benefits, right? And then if you're a small business, you've got to ask yourself, what story am I going to tell myself? When the market goes down, I don't like to focus on the loss. I tell my story that stocks are on sale. See what I mean? So I'll just leave it there and let some other folks jump in.
What about you, Shashi? You were starting to feel some changes last week. What's going on this week?
Yeah, very interesting. But I like Ivana's attitude towards think towards positive, right? Like I can take this moment. This is the third moment that I'm having since I came to the US probably 25 years ago. First moment was 2000. Didn't care about the stock market because I didn't have any money. Second moment was 2008. Still didn't care about the stock market because hey, I had a job, so I was happy, right? So think positive there. This is hitting a little bit more harder in that, when you're close to retirement, you really don't know when you're going to retire and what's going to happen. So A couple of days ago, I had put a stat that almost 50 to 60% of the US population has stocks in some way or form, right, whether retirement or otherwise. So I did confirm it's depending on which site you see, it's more than 60%.
No, okay.
People are feeling this. So the immediate reaction, at least for me, is all my spending that's more than what is regular, I'm going to stop till I'm certain like what's going to happen, right? So it's only going to be food, groceries, little entertainment, maybe slash any expenses that I don't need till we figure this out. And that I think will be the thing that most people are going to do. I don't think anybody's going to say like, "Hey, the stock market is going to come back. Let me spend the money, the comeback money right now." So that's my take. I know, like I said last time, cars surprisingly are going off the lots, but there are no new bookings. Meaning, people rush to find cars that are exactly in the lot before these things came up.
Yeah. Leland.
So I have been following this quite a bit. Really trying because I knew that you were going to talk about this, and so I was like, okay, I got to buckle down. I want to look into this because I don't want to come in blind. So thank you for giving me the little heads up, and I see this as an opportunity for small business owners because when you have the tariffs going up against China, and ultimately this is against China. Trump is very against how dependent we are on China. He said yesterday that the United States can no longer produce enough antibiotics to treat our sick. We import virtually all of our computers, phones, televisions, electronics. A single shipyard in China can produce more ships in 1 year than all of American shipyards can produce. We are heavily dependent on China. And if China were to just come in and say, that's it, we're cutting you off, we're going to war with you, we're screwed. And so what he wants to do is bring back manufacturing to America, which is a huge opportunity for small business owners, because once more factories are coming in, then small businesses then get to glean the benefits from that. Yes, in the short run, we're going to be hurt because the stock market is going to hurt. That always happens within any kind of uncertainty, marketing uncertainty. But if we persevere and we are bringing in, and we're already seeing the fruits of that, GM has already said we're going to start bringing in plants in here so that we're not manufacturing cars in Mexico and then bringing them over, through all this stuff that comes from China to Mexico, built in Mexico, slap that label. Oh yeah, this was made in Mexico. Most of it was made in China. They're going to be building plants in America to make sure that as much of it is going to be made in America, which is ultimately going to bring more money into American pockets and keep it in America rather than China. It's just going to, and it's going to take a couple of years, but at that point, we're going to have more money. We're going to be more prosperous. And then he's also wanting to make sure that the tariffs that we're experiencing, we could sell more out there. So once we have the manufacturing, we can sell more to the world, which brings money into us instead of into China. That's my take on it. I'm hoping that it works out. But yeah, we're going to see a little bit of a little hurt in the beginning because it's kind of like getting off of a narcotic. You don't wean yourself off of it. You just go, let's kind of cut it off. It's going to hurt, but hopefully in the end, we're better off.
The cold one, you got a pensive stare into the universe going on. Right now.
Oh, I'm just waiting on Santa to come down the chimney. This Pollyanna foolishness of anybody acting like they know what's about to happen is ridiculous. And the one thing I will say about this is that if you just think, I don't even know what the question is. What's the question?
Every week I ask you, how are you seeing or feeling about the current economic environment? And of course, this is a big week because it was Liberation Day, and and all the tariffs got announced, and then the stock market is crashing, and it's actually down like another 1,500 points today or thereabouts. You had the Fed chair come out and say, this current policy is potentially rife for making inflation worse. And you had JP Morgan Chase come out and say, you know what, this potential tariff war, price war, is going to move the odds of a recession going up from 40% to 60%. So how you feel about things this week?
I mean, this is a absolute train wreck. And you ever see a cartoon of somebody punching themselves in the face? That's America. That's where we are right now. And it makes zero sense to me. If it makes sense to everybody else, good for you. I just don't speak that language. I can't look, it's like what's Judge Judy always says, don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. And that's where we are. And here's the funny thing. I know, but here's the funny thing. Everybody on this call knows it. Everybody on TV knows it. Everybody that's talking about it knows it. I'll just say it. This is bullshit. I don't understand why we're doing this, but you know what? Here's the one thing I will remind you of, is that it's all about the economy, stupid. And the deal is, we had a president in 2007 that couldn't even go to his party's party for the nomination of the election. Yeah, exactly. They wouldn't even invite him to the convention simply because of an economy that actually happened on his watch. He didn't actually, make it happen. This one, though, it's got your fingerprints all over it. So let's put the, let's lay it all down at the feet of the person responsible. And hopefully it works out. I have no idea what's about to happen. And I'm not even going to pretend like I know what's about to happen, because none of these other people know what's about to happen.
I want to know who I'm listening is. Is that somebody from the government or something?
What do you mean?
You see this LinkedIn user says, I'm listening. Like, that's kind of ominous. If you think, I'm just curious. Please let us know who you are, who's listening out there. We'd love
who's
to know
out there
who
listening? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Right.
By the way, that last person was John Lawson. His name, you spell his name LAWSO. Not to be confused with Brent Leary.
Oh my God. But okay, but anyway.
But let me say this. I'll say this. This is when I first asked this question like a couple months ago, everybody was like, "Oh, we're gonna give it a chance. We'll see where we're going." Feeling pretty positive. I can definitely just tell that feeling is wearing off. And
none of us knew what was going to happen.
I did, but you did
not.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Nobody knew exactly what was going to happen, because nobody knew he was going to do this.
Right. This is ridiculous.
Well, wait,
if he'd have told you this a week ago, what would you think?
Oh,
I'd have told you this a week ago.
I already formed an opinion, but I wasn't going to weigh in.
But I'm saying the exact.
But Ivana is shaking her head. I want to know what's going on there, Ivana.
Maybe, I'm sorry. I think everyone knew exactly what was going to happen. I mean, none of this is new information. None of this is a surprise to me. I think we were told that tariffs were going to happen. And companies worked appropriately. We were told all the things, and people voted. And people voted for all the things. People voted to live in a reality show that impacts our 401k and our investments, right? So I'm sorry, I don't buy that we didn't know what was going to happen. At the very least, you knew it was going to be a clown show. That much we knew, and we said, yes, I'm ready to
Clown
tune
show.
in 24/7 to Clown Show. I see people in my Facebook feed who think this is the most amazing, smartest thing ever. And again, I come back to for who? I believe, and I'm seeing, I would love to know if anyone, maybe Shashi, maybe anyone has read some other things. I'm just going to give you my anecdotal observation. So I'd like to hear your thoughts. My anecdotal observation has been that, like in 2008, when we had the real estate market doing crazy stuff, right? And then that happened. I don't hear so much about real estate in that way. What's coming across my feed, that's all I'll say, are stories about private equity companies buying up brands, let's call it that, and taking those brands into some type of bankruptcy. I hear on my video streams people who are like farmers, like little family farms, who are talking about going bankrupt because they either signed up for something and didn't get it, or these tariffs are causing them difficulties and they're not going to be able to sell their corn or like whatever, and that they fully expect to go bankrupt, and then they fully expect to be bought out by there are apparently, again, there are equity companies, or there are entities that are buying up small businesses and farms. I'm in Cleveland, so there's a lot of manufacturing here, and I've been in this space now for 25 years, and I've observed one generation retiring from their manufacturing business and handing it off to another generation of their kids. So what were dads that ran that business, that maybe started that business in the 50s or the 60s? There's quite a few. I'm seeing like not just sons taking over, but I'm seeing way more women taking over these businesses than I had expected. And now I'm curious about what's going to happen here. I've been in the manufacturing industry for a very, very long time. And I can tell you that it takes decades to build up production and the infrastructure inside of a manufacturing business, especially for pharmaceuticals. I have been in the medical device and pharmaceutical manufacturing business, and it takes decades to start a new production. Okay. And we have let that go over the last 50 years. We have let that go. So as much as I love Leland's, what he's talking about, I would love to see that, because I always say you can't sit on a service. I love manufacturing. We just have given it up over the last 50 years. We've just let it go. And what I'm hearing from small manufacturers is they have tried to get their product done here in the United States, but it is just not as efficient. The quality is not as good. They're unpredictable. And it's costing like 2 to 3 times as much and taking 2 to 3 times as long. Yeah. To create those systems, I'm here to tell you, takes decades, and kids are not interested in manufacturing. They don't have new engineers. They don't have new computer people whose job it is to work on optimizing molds and machines. It's just so much more complicated than what you hear talking heads talk about.
Hey, to your point, even I heard, because I've been kind of digging into this too. There are currently like 500,000 manufacturing jobs going completely open here in the States because of what you said. Let's face it, I don't think this is a good thing. We have way more content creators than we have people willing to work in jobs like manufacturing. But you know who was willing to work at those kind of jobs? Immigrants. So how do you, it seems a bit of an incongruous thing here. We're talking about the tariffs and bringing these jobs back when people here don't want to do those jobs, and the people that are willing to do those jobs are immigrants that you don't want here.
Here's how they're going to do those jobs. Here's how, and this is just me, please argue with me. Here's how I think they're going to do those jobs, right? We are going to tank the economy so much that people will be grateful and happy for absolutely any income that they have. Hence, they will take those jobs, not because they want to, but because they have to. What do you guys think?
Grapes of Wrath, John Steinbeck, right?
I was thinking more of like a George Orwell kind of dystopian kind of existence.
But
I mean, think about it.
no, but
John,
can
what do
I?
you think?
y'all don't want to open these cans of worms, bro. Play lightly with John. But I will tell you, look, I've been in business for 25 years. And in that 25 years, my business went from me, okay, as an individual, picking stuff up. I didn't actually make it from scratch, right? But I would take things and pull them apart and reformulate them into packages and bundles and then resell that. That's how I started my business. It was, a single person operation. And I was doing the quote manufacturing. Like I said, I didn't make the products from scratch, but I took imported products, packaged them together, and resold them. Okay. But as I grew as a business, I realized that in the supply chain was the lowest profitable part of my business. And it was the least scalable part of my business. So as I grew into a better, more savvy entrepreneur, I figured it would be better off to outsource that low wage kind of work. It's like you go into a restaurant and somebody cooks the food, but the owner of the restaurant makes the money. So the idea of let's all go back to being line cooks when we used to own the restaurants is absolutely redundant and ridiculous. And I don't get it. But what I'm saying is that as a business grows, we know what parts of the business should be outsourced so we can focus in on the profit market margins and what makes the most profit. Well, so as our country grew, we started focusing on the things that made us the most profits, as opposed to the low-level work, which was something that could be outsourced to countries that had lower costs for manufacturing.
That's why we're in the place we're in today. It's cheaper to have like 7 or 8 different countries build different parts of it, ship these things back and forth, than it is to actually manufacture it here.
That's what a free market is. That's what a free market economy does. We looks for it, like John was saying. We look for, as business owners, we look for efficiencies
and profits.
And profits. And what is that economic theory? I forget what the name of this is. I should know that economies and countries will always go to their core strengths.
And you know what? The core strengths that we wanted to gravitate towards was intellectual property.
Yes.
That's where the money. I mean, it's a person who sings a song. They don't make money singing the song. They get the publishing rights, and that's how they make their money. So all of us in the U.S. gravitated towards that, and all those things that needed people to actually put stuff together. It was cheaper to do all the shipping around here and let them, do all that stuff and then reconfigure it than it was to build everything here. And I don't know how that changes because, we're putting tariffs on, what do you expect? The prices not to increase with these tariffs, where people are not even going to want to buy the stuff because they're used to getting it, cheap, about 80% cheaper. This whole thing has not been well thought out.
You need to have a supply chain.
Yeah.
You need to have a supply chain. Like, think about it. I love John's example where he was purchasing things and creating value. And in some ways, I actually see that as intellectual property in a way. He's using his creative mind, his innovation to create something of value, right? That was not created.
Yeah.
Right. And at the same time, we have lots of wonderful small businesses, and I'm going to call them creators too, whether they're doing t-shirts, whether they're making furniture, whether like so many things. And we don't make material here. We don't make what is that called? We don't make like cotton.
You know what? We don't make it because it wasn't profitable for us to make it. We wanted to focus on the intellectual stuff.
So if you wanted to make cotton and string and yarn and those types of raw materials that go into making things, again, it takes years. You know, people are talking right now about some manufacturing coming here, whether it's Apple or Hyundai or whoever. Hello, these are multi-billion-dollar facilities. It takes a decade to make that decision and to build that thing. I mean, I just said a decade, but it takes right. More than 6 weeks.
Yeah. Exactly.
Can I give a perspective on this? Like Leland said a couple of things that the history of what's happening today is actually 30 years back when globalization began. And John, you and Brent are really right that focus of the US is intellectual property, building new things, giving the world the internet, GPS, and everything else, right? So that's a good motive. But when manufacturing started moving outside, nobody did anything to say like, hey, what will happen to all the people who had those manufacturing jobs? And they were predominantly white in areas that the current president had the highest support. So in his mind, he's saying like, hey, I need to save these people because they voted for me. Now, how they're going about it is absolutely a lot of economists have questioned, right? But one thing that Leland said, China would have surpassed any other country in the world in terms of economy, and that is common knowledge. It's not a new thing, right? Now, they're not as dependent on the US as they were in 2016. Because they started realizing, like, if we don't depend on our domestic market and only depend on the US can shut down our economy very quickly, right? And that's kind of a little bit that's happening. What I don't understand is Europe. What I don't understand is Canada and Mexico. What I feel is there may be something to tell these people, tell these countries, like, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z to stop like drugs or anything like that. So a positive outcome of this could be in a couple of months, everything is back to normal, hopefully, not much damage caused. Or we are in it for the long run, in which case, like Ivana said, it's going to be a lot of pain. Imagine anything that you buy. The first time I saw an underwear made in China, I was thinking the minute China stops making underwear, what do? We go to these small businesses who suddenly the one or two in the US who are making these products, and they're going to say like, hey, it's going to cost you $80, and you can't say no to that, right? Till the manufacturing kicks in. It happened to masks, remember, during the pandemic, like when we couldn't get masks anywhere else, people were trying to build masks. Now on pharmacy especially, Indian pharmaceuticals, which is the highest export to the US, are exempt from tariffs. So yeah, medicines are not going to go up in the near future. So two things. I mean, this could have been done in a less painful way, in my opinion. Number two is explain what you're trying to do, and why don't you have the whole world come together to say like, hey guys, we need to make sure China doesn't become too powerful to threaten us.
Now that you see, you said something that I don't think is in our current president's vocabulary. Come together. He's more of he wants to be the person. He's from the era of John Wayne. You know, the lone guy comes in and like beats the army of Indians with one hand tied behind his back. That's the way he approaches everything. He wants to, you know, he's been talking about terror since the 80s. You know, this is not anything new. Like even I said, it's not anything new. People should have known that he couldn't do it in his first term because he had what do they call those people that were supposed to be safeguarding us from his worst instances? He don't have any of those folks now. So he's finally doing what he wants to do, not because I don't think it was because he thought it was going to help a certain group of people. He just wants to prove that he was right, and he wants to use this, what he perceived as his leverage as a president, to bludgeon. Because, like you said, I agree with you on the China thing. What's Mexico and Canada got to do with this?
Yeah.
What does Vietnam got to do with it? I mean, there's so many countries that are taking strays. If it was all about our relationship with China, it's not about that. It's more about his idea of I want to see, I want to be right. I want people to say that he was right.
So when you're talking about Mexico, you're talking about Vietnam, and you're talking about Canada. The tariffs there are because China uses them as a manufacturing point. China is creating manufacturing plants in Mexico, building all of the parts in China, shipping them to Mexico, putting them together, and then putting them across the border. And so that's why they're going specifically after that. And in fact, Trump has actually been in negotiations with Mexico. Mexico's gone to where Canada's been like, we're going to go and retaliate. We're going to fight against this. Mexico went, all right, well, let's talk. Let's actually negotiate. And so Trump has actually dropped a lot of tariffs on Mexican goods, but he's kept all of the tariffs on things that have come from China, built in Mexico, and brought over to the border. So that way China can't just make a whole bunch of cars in Mexico and ship them over the border and sell them for cheap and get around that tariff that would be imposed. Same thing with Vietnam. Vietnam is one of those relay points for goods to be manufactured in China, brought over to Vietnam, and then brought into America in order to be able to get around those tariffs. And so Trump is willing to actually negotiate. He's doing it with Mexico. And if these companies, and I know that these countries are starting, Canada has actually today announced, all right, let's come to the negotiation table. Israel has said, all right, let's drop the tariffs. Let's negotiate. I want to be able to have free and open trade. The UK has actually come in and said, we're not going to do reciprocal tariffs. We want to talk with you. Australia has actually come to the board saying, we've been wanting to talk to you, but we can't get a hold of you. But they are saying that they're desperate to talk with you. So
I'm just laughing because that sounds ridiculous. I mean, the part about they don't know how to get to them. I think, and I get it. I understand, the power play, China and trying to get all the China's, I guess, allies. Although I thought they were our allies. Where is it where you have to try to threaten threaten countries to do instead of actually do that?
You know what?
Thing.
Hey, let me just. I mean, who cares? I don't care about that. I mean let's take it back to what should small businesses do right now?
I got one thing that I think came from Leland's list here. Let me see if I can bring this up. Keep an eye on rising layoffs at the smallest businesses. What is that about, Leland? Because it sounds like everybody's kind of getting wary. I thought that was on your list.
I think Shashi added some.
I added this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think she was talking about businesses that are heavily dependent on imported goods, and since they can't afford it, they're actually laying off people.
How long can small businesses who are being impacted by these tariffs, how long can they hold out before they have to go belly up?
I don't. You know what? I got a friend right now. He's got because you got to order. He makes shoes in another country. I think India or somewhere. I don't know, but it's not China. Okay, and he's got a whole ship coming over, and literally when it lands in a week, it's going to cost him $60,000 more than it was. Yes. And it's going to come directly out of his account. And so many people that are small business owners that have products that have already been ordered, already been paid for. When they hit these shores, they're going to get taxed. And guess who's going to pay for that tax? Not China,
Consumers.
not Mexico, not Canada. It's
US
going to be the
consumers.
small business owner.
And
what's
the
that small
consumers.
business in the consumer?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, anyway, whatever. That's what I'm saying. It's like we can talk about these big Pollyanna things, but you know, and we could talk about Wall Street, but Main Street, I don't think we're talking about that and how that's going to affect all of Main Street. And just what Sashi said right at the beginning is that what I'm hearing from most people is like, we're not going to spend any money. And that's going to affect us all.
Yeah, I think that I keep going back to this. So I don't think this is a well thought out thing. If you're talking about helping people today or helping people, small businesses, because if you expect small businesses to have to wait 5 years before it gets better, they're not going to be around. I mean, it's just not going to be for them. And I just don't understand how people.
I'm back to the basics, Brent.
Yeah,
I'm back to the basics. Now, there are a lot of people who like to say that we should run our government like a business. I am not one of those things. A government is not a business. But to John's point, I'm never, ever really clear whenever we're talking about policies or all these other things. One of the things that I'm very confused about is who is our customer? Because that is the fundamental question every small business should ask themselves. Who is my customer? Right? And I'm always saying that, and we're always saying that. And I continue to feel that way, right? Because that's how you're going to be successful in running your business. I see a lot of small businesses pivoting, right? Because you're going to have a lot of customers who cannot afford to purchase what you're selling, given what John has just said, right? I'm wondering if your friend is going to have all this inventory sitting around, right? Because people are not going to be buying those shoes. And so then the marketing advice is find a new customer, right? Because a valid market segment must include someone who can afford to pay you and pay the price you're charging.
Hmm.
And so that's going to be a much smaller group of people who cannot be served.
I'm curious about the $60,000. What if that's a lot of money? What if he doesn't have it or she? I don't know who this.
Yeah. Oh, that's another thing that's going to happen too. There's going to be packages. When I say packages, I mean whole crates and whatever those things.
The shipping container, right?
There's going to be abandoned containers at the shipping ports. Now we're not going to be able to unload ships because we can't get rid of the containers because people can't afford the containers that are coming in. I'm telling you, bro, there's so many downstream impacts to what's happening. It's about to get crazy in these parts. And guess what? The SBA has been slashed in half. So
I wish this was on my talking point.
There's no money for you. It's just crazy.
You're supposed to, I that was on one of my talking points. There's like 40% reduction in force at the SBA. And I thought it was funny that on my research, as I was summarizing things, I thought, oh, this is really funny because one of the tips is go to the SBA to get loans. And then the very next point was, and the SBA has been cut now. So who's going to do this?
I'll take it a step further. The $60,000. Let's say they got good credit, so they can borrow to pay that. So the additional $60,000 that they weren't really expecting to pay because of the tariffs, now you have to put interest payments on top of that. If you're able to get credit, who knows?
And if you're able to get the shoes sold like you had expected, because the volume's going to be reduced.
Yeah, because Shashi over there is like already saying, I ain't buying nothing.
Right.
So it just feels like this is somebody's fantasy from the 80s.
Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock.
Well, I think let's go back to talking about small business owners and small business owner leadership, because what we've all been talking about right now is understanding the system, understanding the flow, understanding all the elements of your process. And this week, you guys did not talk about AI, but one of the things that I've realized in playing with AI is that you have to be exceptionally good at understanding how to lean and run a business. How to run a business and understand every little individual process and every little milestone and the impact of that. If this, then that. If this, then that. And I think this is a huge lesson for all small business owners, to understand if this, then that. What are your options? And I think that maybe we've been spoiled a little bit in, running with the punches, but as everyone has said, this is going to have a ripple effect all the way down the line, and we don't really understand systems thinking so much.
Yeah, processes and workflow and automation. I think,
and it can take, as I keep saying, things can take months. Things are not immediate. The impacts of things can take months, years, decades by the time you see it. So making as much as we want as small business owners to be able to be flexible and to pivot and change, you've got to understand what impact that's going to have on your process. You got to know your process, know your costs. I don't see that a lot.
One thing I wanted to add, Brent, the story was about, for example, landscaping. If they don't get any jobs at all, they're not going to keep the people on, right? And this morning I heard about builders. They gave a quote 6 months back. By the time the material comes, it comes now. And the price, that guy was saying something really horrible. It wasn't 25%. It was like 200%.
Oh my God.
So the homeowner is probably not going to say like, hey, I don't care. I paid you the money, but I can't pay you this much more. But one thing that we are missing here is the manufacturing jobs very soon will be robots. So it's not like the jobs that 30 years ago people did are going to come back. So right now, I think, and people look to the government. I mean, even if it's a country, democratic, capitalist country like the US, you still need to take care of people who may not be able to afford to do this. So you have to look at what are the future of jobs for the next 20 years by the time everything gets stabilized. Granted, let's say we start manufacturing with low labor costs, which means that using robots, what will the people still do? Right? So the plumbers will never get outsourced. We never outsourced plumbing to China because you had to. I mean, if something went wrong, you had to bring them here, right? So anything that needs like fire, security, all of those jobs will be there. But people don't want these jobs all the time, and sometimes like they don't pay well enough for people to be in the same county that they are. I think these are some of the things internally we should also look. Every small business who wants to manufacture entirely in the US, it will take 2 to 3 years by the time they switch their supply from outside back to whatever they can get here. So maybe some relief, and like you said, there's no relief because SBA isn't there. Hopefully I'm hoping this doesn't last too long and everybody sings Kumbaya again.
Hey, maybe it's going to be a sink or swim. Maybe we've all just been thrown into the deep end, and now you just there are some people who are absolutely going to thrive and shine in this environment. And then there are going to be many, many, many more who will not.
Let me ask you that. Let me stop you right there. Let's say that's the case. Is the country better off overall if only a few are able to swim and prosper and the masses don't? I mean,
when was the last time we had something like that? How'd it go?
Well, the last time we had a serious tariff and a price war kind of thing was 1930. It's called the Smoot-Hawley tariff.
You should have had some Ferris Bueller on there for that.
Yeah, right.
Actually, I did have that clip. I should have been right. I was like, that is perfect.
Playing it.
Everybody. So
anyone?
We've seen what happens when this goes on and countries end up in a price war. It's not a good thing. That's why I think I mentioned that last time. History is not on the side of whoever thinks this is going to work the way that they think it's going to work. Where are they getting that thought from? Because it's not from looking at history.
Well,
Who wins? Who wins? And what do you have to do to win? Because, I like I say, if it's raining, bring an umbrella. So that's my, go ahead, Bleedland.
Well, I was going to say, back in 1996, Nancy Pelosi wanted reciprocal tariffs. Back in 2018, Barack Obama fighting for it. Back in 2008, Bernie Sanders wanted reciprocal tariffs. It's not just the right. It's not now that Donald Trump is wanting. He's wanted it since the 80s. All of a sudden, now it's evil. And
all of a sudden now it's here. Now I don't want to be like, I don't want to also and nobody did what was being done right now.
Yeah, this is like a blanket. This one is a blanket that goes
here,
multi-country. I mean, I look, I don't think it's good. I know there's people like the Democrats and a lot of the unions back in the day. They were all for it, and I think they're all for it now because of, I guess, like the past history of, with tariffs and saving jobs. I just think that generally speaking, everybody who's looking backwards are only looking backwards at what they perceive as the good old days of the 50s and 60s. This is not it. And we're trying to fight a smaller, more close-knit world because of all the technological advances in the communications revolution. Everything is smaller. Everything is more interconnected. Countries. One company who might be based over here might have like tentacles in like 80 different countries.
And
There's no way to unwind that.
And what's really interesting? I keep saying, we keep talking around this thing, and yet we have never ever discussed who is our customer, what is our goal. Like as a country, see, China has done that. There are lots of countries who have done that. They made the decision. 50 years ago? How long has it been? Right? With their infrastructure and the way their government runs and how they do things, they said, we are going to take advantage of this trend. The US doesn't want to make stuff. We can do it cheaper. We're going to do this. And they have put together an infrastructure that will knock your socks off.
Yeah. Right? All right. Let me answer that though, because do we want to go the way of the Chinese government? I don't think we want to. We want a fair and free market.
I'm just asking, what are our goals as a country? We have not, and this is a lesson for small businesses. If you are not going anywhere, if you're not achieving your goals, if you are not clear on what those goals are, right? We are not clear on what we want to accomplish and for whom, because no matter who you,
I don't know if that's true. They just haven't told you who it is.
Yeah.
Well, it's a capitalistic society, basically, and it's kind of hard to be a capitalist and then try to take the Chinese model, which is the government dictates everything.
We haven't made choices. We have not made choices, and every choice you make has some positive pros and some cons and some detriments and bad things that are going to happen, right? So, let's say we can make a value-based decision that says, to pick something completely different, everyone should have healthcare, right? That is just like a choice. We can decide to do that. When you decide, that's one choice. If you decide that healthcare is a privilege and not a right, you have to be okay with people dying in the streets, because that is the consequence of that choice. You have to be okay with that, because that is that choice. And likewise, regardless of what you choose as a business, there will be winners, there will be losers, but you're making choices and you're taking actions to fulfill on those goals and those objectives. And I just feel like I would like to know, out in the open, as John says, we all know, right? When you have, because things are not clear, I'm all for pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. I'm an immigrant here. Who else? Shashi, you and I are the immigrants here. I am all for it. I am all for competition. I am all for opportunity. I am all for that, right? But that requires a certain infrastructure to create that type of a thing, right? Then maybe we don't protect the big guys who are quote unquote too big to fail, because that's what capitalism is. People either buy from you or they don't.
but good. Take that a step further. The big guys are usually the ones who get the chance to make the choices and the decisions. Lobbyists. How many of us have lobbyists? You know.
And I think that is the problem, because back when it was the 80s and we had Detroit was flourishing because of all of the auto manufacturing. And even you said that's like, oh, we didn't want to do the manufacturing. No, we, the people, wanted to do the manufacturing. The companies were like, oh, we could just make it cheaper and move our operations over to China. And then all of a sudden Detroit is just.
Now I'm going to jump on the other. Anything taken to its extreme becomes its opposite. Right.
Ooh, wow.
And so,
mic drop, by the way, that was a mic drop.
I thought that would, like, everybody knew that. That's
but that was a good bar. You were very concise the way you said it.
Yeah. Everything taken to extreme I come from Pittsburgh. It's a steel city, right? Heavily union labor. Okay. Mm-hmm. And in the 70s and the 80s, those unions, I'm sorry, they got out of control. Right. They had lots of benefits. They were making bank, and they were literally, there was like a peer pressure to, let's say, slow things down or do things a certain way or whatever. So when Reagan gave them the opportunity to invest in their equipment and upgrade their equipment, and when Edward Deming, the father of Japanese and Chinese is an American, and every single manufacturing facility said, go away. We don't care about that kind of quality thing. That increases our cost, and we don't care about your quality system. So Edward Deming said, ciao USA, and went over to Toyota and Honda in Japan, and they were like, dang, we love your system. They implemented that system over 50 years. So you see what I'm saying? And now I'm a big union fan, because, like, again, anything taken to its extreme becomes its opposite. We knew how to treat people. We've all had MBAs, right? But we decided not to do it. We decided not to do the quote unquote right thing, which is why we can't have nice things, right? So it's complicated. It's complicated, but you can't have to Brent's point, you can't have a cafeteria economy. Right? If you want to have the 1950s, you're going to have to take all the 1950s and 90% tax rates, and whether it's segregation or, like, we're going to have to, if you want that, then you're going to have all of it.
You know what? This is funny. Man, there's like an old movie, and this put Ron Howard on the map, right? And this movie was called Gung Ho.
Oh, yes.
Right? And it starred Michael Keaton. And it was 1986, and it was about China bringing Japanese bringing.
Was that like Big Time in Little China? Wasn't that the name of it?
No.
Gung Ho.
It's a comedy that tells the story of an American automobile factory that was taken over by a Japanese corporation, and they were bringing in the way that Japan makes, the Toyota cars, and it was just all about a clash of cultures. Yeah. But there's more to the story about how we got to where we are in Detroit than just that. I mean, but part of what you were saying, man, I used to, I'm from Ohio, and we have a lot of auto parts working there too, and that used to be the job to have.
Well, think about it.
People were making six figures.
Yeah, but that's because
windshield wipers on cars.
You go back to like the early days of the Motown in car production. Ford did not want unions anywhere near his, and he was the last one to give in because he didn't want to cede any power. Because once you cede power to the union, he didn't even want to be a part of the business when that happens. Because as even has said, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and I think that kind of goes in tandem with what you're saying. Anytime the pendulum swings too far to one side, it has to swing back in order for things to get more in balance, and for actual things to get done, at least in a way that one team isn't feeling like they're getting taken full advantage of. So I think, we've been talking around this thing. So we're at the top of the hour, which is amazing. We literally spent the whole time talking about this. So final thoughts for each on this particular weird liberation, liquidation, whatever you want to call it. Leland, why don't you start off?
All right. So in our area, we have Amazon come in. I mean, this is a rural area. No, not a lot of people computer illiterate or that were computer literate, and they started making programs to have people learn how to run data centers. Rural area farm boys running computer centers, and it's a great success. We have tons of people now that are able to run fiber and run these data centers. And so we're able to adapt in a very small amount of time. And yeah, it's not maybe something that could be scaled all the way, but if we could do it, the world as a whole can change. They can evolve, and it could find ways to actually adjust to something like this. We still got 4 more years of Trump, and if the Democrats are able to get someone in and remove all those tariffs, okay, that's what people voted for. But we're going to have to, at least for the next 4 years, learn to adapt and learn to change and grow with what's going on in this situation. I mean, you could try to impeach him. He's been impeached a couple of times.
That ain't gonna work.
It didn't stick. You need a lot to be able to remove a president from office. So the best thing to do right now is to try to take the situation and make what's best out of it in the best way that you can. Try to find the path of least resistance to try to ultimately succeed.
Shashi.
I think this is the time to reflect back on the business you're in. What is the value that you're providing? Don't make any strong bets on uncertainty. Just conserve your energy as much as possible. And yeah, Godspeed and carry on.
I like that. But you left off the keep calm part, which we need a little calmness in here. Anyway, Mr. Ice.
Turn the TV off, turn the TV off, turn the TV off. Yes. Get your head down, go back to basics where you need to, and, just keep plugging along. It's always something, man. It's always something. And in small business, one of the things we're good at is being nimble and adjusting. And we'll be fine.
I like the optimism here. I really do. And speaking of optimism, we missed it last week, but we're glad she's back this week for our moment of mic drop from the madam herself, Eva Taylor.
Okay. Well, I'll start with a simple one. I like to say that things happen for you, not to you, right? So whatever is going on in life, it's happening for me and not to me. So that's number one, which leads us to number 2, which is focus on what you can control. To John's point, turn off the TV. Focus on what? Your customer. What are your goals? Who you can talk to, what you offer, how you're going to price, what you say and how you say. These are all things you control. You control your actions. You don't control anything else. Do the best you can, right? Simplify everything because you only got to hit one. You got to find one that works. So simplify everything.
Okay. I'll just say I think Shashi has a great idea in terms of just stop spending anything you don't need to spend at this point. Kind of hunker down because I think we're all saying the same thing in terms of nobody really knows what's going to happen, what the end result. We have some ideas, but it's different to have ideas than to actually see what happens. So I think you got to put yourself in the best position, which is unfortunately right now it's like a hunkering down. Keep your head down. Keep that TV off. Keep your wallet closer as you possibly can. And don't look at if you're in the market, if you have a 401k, I advise you not to look at it. There's no good that can happen from you looking at it right now. As I just looked at the stock market, it's at its lowest point of the day. The Nasdaq is down almost 800 points now. The Dow is down over 1,600 points. Just don't look at it because you can't do anything. And the worst thing you can do is sell. So if you don't have to sell, do not sell. Do not sell. Hold on as long as you can.
Everything that goes down has to go up again.
It's on sale if you can buy.
That's right. I'm actually, I am definitely one of those people that squirrel away some money. I'm going to buy because, I would not buy everything, put all your money in now, but, drip it
No.
in.
You don't
Yeah.
buy when you don't buy when it's going down, folks. I don't know what these guys are telling you.
No, you drip
Don't
it in
buy-
because you don't
you
know
do
when
not
it's
buy
going
when
up
it's
or
going down.
you don't know if it's going to turn around
I'm
up
just
or down.
telling you. You
Just
can buy
drip
it
it
when
in.
it's down, but don't
Drip
buy
it
it
in.
when it's going down.
Drip it in.
Duh.
Every week you put a little in because you never know what's going to go up or down or when it's going to go. But if you do a consistent drip, you'll end up better off in the long
Well,
run.
yeah, I mean, definitely dollar cost average.
Dollar
Yeah.
cost
Don't
average.
stop that. Don't
Yeah.
stop that. But don't just go and let's go buy it today because you could lose it tomorrow.
On that note, I wanted to give an advice that you all probably know is I found the most steady returns from AI. I have the Schwab Intelligent Portfolio, so I don't have to worry about what goes on. When the market goes down, it automatically does it. I would not bet
I like
your
that.
whole money on that, but
Yeah,
even if it's not in double digits, you at least get a steady kind of return.
Cool.
I'm not a financial advisor, please.
Right, that's right.
Please consult your financial
It's like-
advisor before investing.
This is not a financial show, guys.
Run the
Please-
disclaimer. Let's run the disclaimer now. By the way, shout out to Roy S. Fina. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Finichel. Adding costs for those with less so those with more can benefit doesn't seem and historically hasn't been a good way to build a worldwide economy. See, I don't think the current administration is really worried about the worldwide economy, which I think is another issue all to itself. But anyway, thank you for the comment and thank you for joining us today. All right, I think that's it. This is another once again, man. Thanks you to everybody here because I think being able to have these kind of conversations where we don't always agree, but we're able to do it and walk away from it still being friends and feeling good about each other is really important. So
Who
I
said
thank
we're
you.
friends.
Yeah, and I will answer that at 5:00 this afternoon. I try to have a warm and fuzzy moment and then get the business. Anyway, we'll see you next Friday if we're all still here. If we still have money enough to pay for our power. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, next week, another conversation. Who knows? We never know what we're going to talk about because we never know what's going to happen in the 7 days prior. So who knows what we'll be talking about next week, but we will be here talking about it. See ya. Have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.